From fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada, this is Pod Therapy. Real people, real problems, and real therapists. You can submit your questions anonymously at podtherapy.net or email us at podtherapyguys@gmail.com. And now on Pod Therapy, we have a personal message to send out. Dear Moby, when a woman says she didn't date you, she didn't date you. Continuing to insist that you did date makes you look pathetic and to be honest, makes you look a little creepy. It makes us look bad. By us, I mean guys who actually did date Natalie Portman. And now, broadcasting from the churn, that guy is Dr. Jim Jobin. I'm Nick Tangeman. It's time for some Pod Therapy.
You know, it's interesting because when Moby tried to... You didn't hear about this?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh, Moby wrote like a memoir.
Oh, yeah. Moby, he claimed to have dated Natalie Portman, and Natalie Portman's like, no, we didn't.
Who's that?
So then he doubled down, and he's like, oh, no, we totally did.
I totally hit that. She's just embarrassed.
And then
Natalie, you don't have to say anything.
And then
Natalie.
the more he pushes
Hush.
it's like he just comes off creepier and creepier.
Sure.
No, we totally dated.
Oh, no, I get the creepy part. I understand the creepy part entirely.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so this dude tried to run this bit. It's like gaslighting onto another level, though. When you double down and commit to that, you're hoping that she capitulates and goes, all right, I'm in love with you. You know? Just like, you're just hanging there long enough.
We have 3 children together.
Yeah, I mean, I've gone 13 years on this bit. Okay, it works. Moby's not wrong. Like, one day my wife's going to wake up and be like, I didn't say yes to any of this. How do we have 2 kids and a mortgage?
So your thought is maybe Moby just picked the wrong target.
Yeah. You're reaching a little high there with Natalie Portman, dude. Try the secretary at the office.
Kimberly Portman.
Kimberly, yeah. Natalie's sister.
Get her cousin.
Yeah. So gaslighting to the next level. But,
A little creepy.
Moby, who, as we all know, is a listener of the show. And Natalie Portman.
Well, that's why I wanted to.
Who's also a listener of the show, no matter what she says.
Right. Who I dated.
Yeah. Well, actually, it's funny because as therapists, this is the bit that we could be running on everybody is being like, yeah, this person's a patient. Because, like, what are they going to do, deny it? Like, oh, of course they are.
So what do you mean? Yes, they'll just deny it.
Yeah, of course they're going to deny it. Yeah, well, Oscar Goodman, who apparently is now... I actually was re-listening to that episode where I claimed Oscar Goodman, who I didn't actually claim, did anything, in fact, for the lawyers who are listening.
Right.
There's a lot of lawyers who listen to our show now. I don't know if you saw this. Did you see that happened? Leon Kassab.
Yeah.
Who claimed that I perjured myself by saying that Andrew Torres was the first lawyer on our show. And he's like, nope.
Yeah, because he was
I was
on
there
during our Scoop Fest.
Yep.
Right.
So, but this is why I need everybody, when they appear on our show, to tell me all information about themselves so that I do not accidentally imply anything that is not correct at any given time.
Exactly. This is totally not our fault.
Yes. At the end of the day, it's Natalie Portman's fault. And I think that's what we're trying to get to here. And Moby's a good man, whose women
so
just
you're
don't
coming
understand.
down on Moby's side on this.
I think I am. I'm breaking left on this one. I feel good that it's all going to turn around. And in the next news cycle, Natalie's going to be like, all right, listen.
Okay.
I'm still upset. He broke my heart. I'm just hurt.
I admire
but yes,
that.
We did get married in the Riviera.
This is why we have a Jim's apologies section at the end of the show and not a Nick's because I never.
You just don't bet wrong.
Well,
that's the bit.
I always play it safe.
You do play it safe.
Yeah. Anybody asks me a question, I'm like, well,
whatever Natalie Portman said.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, just break with Natalie. But you know what? We'll see. We'll see how this one turns out.
Okay.
And Portman comes out and she's like, all right, listen, I'm secretly in love. But.
All right. Team Moby.
Speaking of unrealistic optimism, Nick, there has been a new study that came out. It was published in Psychology Today, which we will also feature in the description of this episode. And the study was about at what age our sense of optimism is at its highest.
Oh.
At what human age do we have the highest sense of optimism for the future? And then, like, how does that pan out over time? Like, at what point does that kind of drain away? And it's interesting because a lot of people were like, wait, what? What's optimism?
Right.
Like, where did that come from? But I mean, like, at this point in your life, you're in your mid-50s. I mean, at what point of your life were you the most optimistic for the future? Yeah, I'm looking at you.
Me?
Yeah.
I'm over here reading about Moby and Natalie Portman.
You can get to the bottom of it. Yeah, the tell-all.
You're welcome, Jacob.
Moby has apologized.
Well, I
really?
mean, because he's a gentleman.
Breaking news.
Because he's a gentleman and he doesn't want to embarrass her.
Right.
So, and that really, if anything, shows how deep their love went.
Absolutely.
The fact that he's willing to, play ball for her.
So when was I most optimistic?
When did optimism die, Nick? When did your sense of future die?
I need to tell you a little bit about the Tangeman household.
Okay. Let me take you out to Iowa. Show you how this works.
I think we've viewed optimism as being a threat to survivability, so we tend to squash that pretty early.
You get rid of that.
Yeah, right around kindergarten.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, kindergarten.
There's no Santa Claus.
There is no Santa Claus. The universe is an
Easter
empty
bunny.
void. There's no future. Work until you die.
Yes. Are you done with your chores? That's pretty much it.
Chores?
I don't remember. I don't think I ever lost optimism. When was it at its height?
Yeah.
I would say probably high school. I think my high school years were pretty distorted as far as optimism goes.
Okay. So you were like unrealistically optimistic in high school?
I would say that was the height of my optimism, but I wouldn't say I was ever unrealistically optimistic. I've never really been all that. I don't know. I'm pretty optimistic now, but
yeah. But question about optimism generally.
Question.
Do you believe that optimism is a sign of strength in a patient?
Yes.
If they lack optimism, you get worried.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Optimism
I think optimism is huge.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Especially, it also depends on what the condition is that we're dealing with.
Right.
But, I would say for anything other than like a personality disorder,
right.
Optimism is definitely good.
It's funny because the next book club that you and I are about to tape today involves chapter 12, Hold the Mayo, where she talks about personality disorders.
Oh,
and
right.
I
yes.
am furious. And so,
oh, really?
Dude, I just can't get along with anybody that talks about. Actually, she handled some of it really well, and so we're going to get into it in a second. But or when we tape our book club today, she handled some of it really well. But right off the bat, I was like just scribbling in my book, and then later in that chapter, she kind of redeemed it, and I was like, all right, we're cool again, Lori. But
I just think you can't be happy.
No.
Anyway,
let's talk about that.
Ties into
Let's talk
optimism.
about my lack of optimism. So here's what the data came out with. So the data says the researchers plotted the trajectory of optimism across a human lifespan. So they surveyed lots of people,
Right.
try to figure out who seems the most optimistic, right?
Can I take a guess here?
Oh yeah, take a shot.
Are there two peaks?
Let's go by decades. Yeah.
2 peaks.
Yeah.
That's my guess. I think it gets high in like elementary school, then it dips down. But I think later in
It's
life...
adulthood survey.
Oh.
Yeah, no children. Adulthood
then
survey.
I would say probably 40s.
Is when it goes high?
Yeah, when it peaks. 40s into 50s.
Okay, great. So here's what it says. Consistent with previous research, they found optimism to be lowest in people's 20s, then rise steadily into people's 30s and 40s, peaking in their 50s,
Okay.
and then gradually declining after that. So interestingly, it starts off lower in the 20s, goes up 30s, 40s, peaks in 50s, and then declines steadily after that. Specifically, it was age 55 that people experienced their highest level of optimism.
Yep.
You feel like that makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Why do you think people start to lose that sense of optimism? What do you think it is?
After 55?
Yeah.
I think it goes down after 55 simply because you're getting older and then your health starts failing.
Yeah, so
I
you're
think
starting
once
to
you're-
have those real world
Yeah,
challenges.
I think once you're... Because I think it all has to... and this is just my anecdotal evidence, having not looked at any research, right? So it makes sense to me because I would look at what obstacles you face. So
Right.
that's why I say it would peak twice. I think it's high when you're young because you don't have a whole lot of obstacles.
But it was low. It's low in your 20s.
No. I'm talking before that.
Oh.
I think when you're really young, like when you're school age, it's really
When
high.
you're Carl Young?
And then... Yeah, right. And then when you
Psychology
when
jokes.
you graduate,
Better than yours, by the way.
keep
Better.
keep interrupting
Better
me
than
for
your
those
Skinner.
great jokes.
Oh, no, it was solid. Is that what you do on Twitter? Anyway, you were saying about things you have
Okay.
no research to support.
Right, exactly. As I do on this show, it's kind of my thing. Okay, so then you graduate high school,
Right.
and then you're stuck in the real world. Like
Yes.
you're paying for stuff. It's difficult.
There's a huge transition.
Your
Good point.
life isn't what you thought. I think your optimism drops down.
Yes.
And then I think once you start developing the coping skills to deal with all that,
Yes.
the more your coping skills develop, optimism starts going up because you're like, oh, this is good. Then you get to your 50s where you're established in your career. You probably have got your family or whatever.
Sure.
You've got some financial security, usually by that time. And your health generally hasn't started to fall apart yet.
Okay.
And then I think after that, then
start
that's when all
next
your
transition happens.
that's when people really close to start dying. You've got health issues.
Man, you're painting a really grim reality. There's a lot of listeners that are like, well, I used to be optimistic till Nick started talking.
Oh. Again, this is the Tangeman in me. This is how we deal with
This is what we do. We kill hope and joy in its embryo. Can't let that fester. No, I think it's an interesting point, because I think if you asked other people, when do you think a lot of folks are optimistic? I think that we would naturally pick young, 20s. You go, oh, in your 20s.
I wouldn't have guessed that.
The world's your oyster. But you're right. Like, as therapists, I would say, no, that's not necessarily the case. I see a lot of people in their 20s that are really struggling. I mean, depression can be very common. There's that transitionary effect of jumping from high school, in which you have a very routine 6 hours a day. Everything is sort of preset for you. You're under somebody else's guidance. And then whenever you enter into your adulthood, as you said, the world hits you really fast. It's like being on one of those walkways, flat escalator things in an airport, and then you step onto the ground, and all of a sudden it's like you're moving too quick, and you're like, boom! And like you fall over and smash your face and bleed all over the carpet.
Right.
Yeah, just like that.
Just like that.
It's like LAX. Your 20s is like LAX.
Yeah, and I think the biggest life change comes from high school to young adulthood.
I think that's true.
I think that's a bigger transition than mid-adulthood to later
I think you're
adulthood.
right. I think that you're right. I actually was doing this math the other day, because I was trying to think of how many summers do we have, like, in a human lifetime, right? And so if you give a human, 80 years, 90 years, let's call it 80 to make it easier, and you take away 20 summers, because they're in high school, they don't necessarily have their own, truth. I mean, it's really 18, but for math's sake, take away the extra 2. So then you've got, how many summers between whenever you can, like, live your life on your terms versus maybe when you can't, right? And so maybe health is starting to get a little bit more brittle. Let's say 70. I know a lot of people in their 60s doing great, but, take away, the last 20 there. So you've got, like, between age 20 and, like, age 70, like, this is how many years you've really got. And now that I'm in the middle of that, I'm like, gosh, man, mortality, like, you start to look around and realize, okay, time is happening. And like, you really have to appreciate stuff.
Did you ever see
take adventures?
Did you ever see the YouTube video that somebody did about explaining the lifespan as if it were a video game?
No.
Oh, it is hilarious.
Oh no.
Oh yeah, he's like, it's so funny because he's talking about, okay, all right, so basically in this game you're going to spawn and then you're going to start. Basically, you're going to spend about 20 years learning how to play the game, but you kind of learn some things, but you don't really have all the powers yet.
Yeah.
And then you get to this age, and then you have to learn a whole new set of rules, and it is so funny.
I've seen it done where there's an Excel spreadsheet out there, and it like shows blocks of weeks. It shows how many weeks you have in your human life. And when I say that verbally to you, you think, oh, okay, it must be really big. It's not.
No.
It's really not. Like, it just shows, like, these little lines of 52, and there's only, like, 70 of those. And, like, in one glance, you can see all the days of a human life. And it's off-putting to realize that. And then, like, there's a button you can click where you type in your age, and it will black out, like, all the ones you've lost, and then show generally what's left, and you're just, like, horrified. So this comes back to that idea of optimism. Like, I totally understand where the study might show that peaking at 55, because I think at 55, people start entering into that next season of life, right? And so that's their senior years. They're starting to think about retirement if they can. Their children are probably empty nest by now, in your 50s, that's whenever they're moving on. You might be lucky enough to have some grandkids, but even if you have that, it's a different kind of thing. Like, you poke around, you see them, you go on some adventures, maybe you have some financial stability, maybe you don't. But you're not necessarily, the future no longer seems this cosmic horizon where anything's possible. It's not like you're looking over the Atlantic and being like, who knows what lies beyond in the great new world? Like, no, it doesn't feel like that anymore.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of my patients that, geriatric depression is now this thing. Geriatric, guys, I know sounds like it means extra, extra old, but I think by definition, geriatric depression is anybody over 55. And
really?
Like, I think it is. Yeah. And so it's interesting because that's a huge growing area of mental health, geriatric mental health and generally. And depression and that sense of optimism is so vital, I think, to who we are as human beings. It's necessary. And when it starts to fade away, it's extremely dangerous. I think not just because, depression, suicidality, and things which have actually skyrocketed in that demographic, but just quality of life. It's amazing that just the hopefulness of what's going to happen next or what could happen in the future is so important. They actually have a study out that shows that people who retire, their health declines extremely fast
Right.
after they retire. Because they don't have that daily something to get up for, think about, project, what's coming up next week, what are we going to do next quarter, even if they hate their job. Their health declines rapidly after they retire, unless they fill that void with something new to look forward to.
Logically, that makes sense because you spend so much time that like your job is defined as your purpose,
Right.
especially in America. And then once you get to that age where you retire, then it's like, yeah, now what?
You know, it's really prescient for me. My aunt, I told you, came and visited me this weekend. And she's my father's sister. I haven't seen her since I was 9 years old. And she's in town because my grandfather, who's in his 80s, is here. And he has Alzheimer's and dementia. And so his awareness has been steadily declining. So she came out to basically spend some time with him and engage with him, make some memories. And, you know, in some ways say goodbye in case his health were to fail. Because it's unrealistic as far as when she'll come back out. And it's interesting because we were having these deep talks about her mother, my grandmother, who passed. And my grandmother had this saying in her 60s and 70s. After she retired, she had this daily saying that became her rule for living. And she said, I need to have someone to love, something to do, and something to look forward to. And that was her thing. She had to have all three of those boxes checked. And if she had somebody to love, something to do that day, and something to look forward to, she could take another step and live. And, you know, it's a profound thing, man. It's really, really profound how important, how necessary optimism is to the human experience.
Yeah, I don't think like that.
How do you think?
I don't know as if I think at all.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's right.
That's a deep thought.
It is deep. It's
wow.
hashtag deep. It's the burden of philosophy, man. It's the burden of self-awareness. So it's an interesting thing. But yeah, so according to this study, you know, optimism is low in your 20s, it peaks in your 40s and 50s, and then it curves back down. So you imagine that bell. And I think what we can take away from that, what we can learn from that kind of data, is to know our neighbor and know ourselves. And I think in the same way that you kind of create, you know, most of us probably think about retirement and putting away finances and think about our future, if you can. But also thinking about your mental health future. You know, that if you're in your 40s, if you're in your 50s, to appreciate science like this that tells you you need to create new adventures. You need to create things to be looking forward to. And that's going to be as vital to your long-term survival as having health care.
Yeah.
You know, and making sure you've got enough money for the rent.
See, and that's why it doesn't surprise me that the 50s are a high point.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like I said, I think you've got freedom.
Right.
You know, that's when a lot of people travel.
Yes.
You know, they've got vacation time stored up. You know, they're getting close to retirement, and they're still relatively healthy. So
Right.
you've got all that going on. So you just got to find some way to continue doing that.
Yeah, I agree. So it's interesting.
Wow.
Interesting study of optimism. So most humans, their optimism, you know, curves upward. Nick, yours has been flatlined since you're about 5.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's great because if you have absolutely no expectations or hope for the future, you've already died inside.
Exactly.
Yeah, well,
I'm dead inside.
It's like Game of Thrones. That which is dead can never die.
Exactly.
Joke's on you, life.
Yeah.
I reject you.
Yep. My purpose is to work. That's it.
That's all I do. Oh, man. Very good.
All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will discuss having the same therapist in common with your friends. You're listening to Pod Therapy.
This week's Their Producer sponsor is David, Data Scoop Violon. So, Data Scoop jumped in on the show the other day, did a little recording for us for Mental Health Month, told his tale of surviving depression, surviving having a family member who has substance abuse in their background and is getting treatment for it, and surviving economic disaster. If you have not heard that episode, flick back a few and find that. It happened in May. I don't know which number it was, but a really great recording, and David has always been a huge supporter of the show. And so, David, as we close out May, we just want to take a special second to thank you so much for supporting us as a producer and also supporting us with that message. It gave a lot of people a lot of hope, man. And a lot of people wrote in talking about how they resonated with that, and it made a big difference.
Yeah, we had a lot of people write in.
Yeah. And if you'd like to support the show and join David, you can go to patreon.com/therapy and sign up. Again, that's patreon.com/therapy.
We're back. You're listening to Pod Therapy. Our next question is about having the same therapist in common with a friend.
Hi guys, one thing recently came up when I was chatting with a friend, and I wanted to get your takes on it. He mentioned recently that he'd started going to therapy and selected a therapist based on the recommendations of another mutual friend. On one hand, I totally get taking the advice of someone who knows you well and can help gauge whether you'd mesh well with a therapist, But on the other, it seems like it could be tricky to manage a relationship with a therapist who's seeing other people you interact with on a regular basis. And, question 2, I inherited using the phrase, take a chill pill, from my stepdad as a child, and recently was talking to a coworker and used that phrase. I was then reminded that, due to a recent pregnancy, the coworker is actually not currently allowed to take her chill pills. Is it time to retire this phrase from everyday use? Thanks, guys. Dan. Yeah, good questions, Dan.
Well, let's start with the first one.
Yeah, I think first one. Is it awkward? Did you want to clear your throat fully into the mic? Maybe chew on some Doritos with that help too. The tactile sounds of Nick Tangeman. Welcome to Pod Therapy, where we gauge Nick's throat health.
I'm sorry. Jesus.
What are your thoughts on having a therapist that you have in common with a friend?
Generally, I would avoid it because you don't want the therapist to be kind of put in that situation where they, from context, are able to link the two and then maybe have to pretend like they don't know or they haven't heard some of the stories. I mean, it really depends too on the relationship, like how close you are to this person.
Yeah.
I mean,
will it
obviously,
even come up?
right.
You know?
And if it's like a romantic couple, then that is a much bigger deal, in which case most therapists, if they're aware of that, won't work with that other individual,
right,
if they're already working with one member of the couple. But as far as recommending friends, so I've done this before, like with when I was in therapy, the therapist that I had, I thought she was awesome, and I would absolutely recommend her to anybody. And there was a friend that I recently recommended her to, but I did this because she wouldn't remember me.
Oh, okay.
Like this was...
You are very forgettable.
This was like... I absolutely.
Yeah, that helps. Yeah. You're like an enigma.
I kind of am. Yeah.
Was that what you guys were working on?
An enigma!
But found it.
So anyway, I was seeing her because of my insecurity of being an innocuous human being who has nothing standing out about him. Thanks, Jim. Yeah. She wouldn't remember me.
Yeah,
I was seeing her for my low self-esteem of being not memorable.
Yeah. Guess I'll go back.
Yeah. It's time to circle back. Let me dig that number out.
So, but yeah, I mean, it was like 4 years ago, and it was like very brief. It was like 5 or 6 sessions. So even if he went there and said, hey, I got your name from Nick Tangeman, she's going to be like, oh,
cool.
Okay.
Right.
I don't remember who that is. So in that case, I don't think that's bad at all. But that would be my concern.
So I guess my reaction to that, Dan, is I mean, this is something I think we've talked about a little bit before about like seeing two members of the same couple or the same family or whatever. And generally, this comes down therapist by therapist. I'm generally okay with it. I mean, it happens a lot. And so like in my world, a lot of my referrals now in my private practice, they come from people who have worked with me, right? And so they are open about it. They'll tell their stories. Other people will say, you know what, I think maybe I should see a therapist. And they'll say, go see Jim. And that is like the highest compliment you could ever receive, is somebody says, hey, Jim and I did some great work.
Now, does it matter when it happens? So
if
as far
concurrent,
as like, concurrent
I've had that happen.
Concurrent versus having somebody who has been treated by you and left is a different thing.
Yes. So I'll tell you this. I will do it, but I'm very, very protective. And so like I tell both parties, here's how this is going to go down, and we create a firewall. So let's say that you walk in and you say hi, and I'm like, and when I sit down, the first thing I always ask a new patient is, how did you hear about me? You know, how did you find me today? And let's say you said, you know what, Mayor Oscar Goodman is a patient of yours, and he's a buddy of mine, and so I thought I'd talk to you. And so, yeah, Oscar told me you're a good guy. I thought I'd come in today. My first reaction, first off, I am very poker-faced, and then I will say, great, Nick, I'm excited to meet you. Hey, just so you know, I can't confirm or deny any other patient's identity. But hey, I'm glad that somebody out in the world has a good opinion of me. They pointed you to me, and I'm excited to hear about what we're here to talk about today. And so we leave it there. And if that person ever brings up that person by name ever again, I'm very careful not to react. Right. And then when I do eventually see Mayor Oscar Goodman, who is a patient of mine, Just gonna get sued to hell. Mayor Oscar Goodman is not a patient of mine, okay? But he's a public figure, so I think I can say things like this and not get in trouble. Maybe I should start using fictional characters like Elmo.
or bigger people who aren't
real people that live in Las Vegas.
Yeah,
yeah. Why that, Jim? That seems oddly specific. Former mayor who probably could plausibly be seeing you. Okay, so let's say Elvis Presley is the other guy. There you go. He's dead. Allegedly. And so Elvis comes in the next week and he says, hey, Jim, excited to sit down. Hey, I sent in my buddy Nick. Did you guys get a chance to meet? And I'll then do the same thing with that person. And I'll say, hey, Elvis, just so you know, I can't confirm or deny if I've seen anybody at all, but it sounds like you've been putting my name out there. Thanks for that, brother. I'm glad to hear it. So let's talk about this week. And I'll immediately pivot back into them, right?
Right.
And then again, if they ever reference each other or anything like that, I will avoid that. It's funny because I had a situation once where guy A, who's my regular patient, and we were working on anxiety, he refers guy B. So guy B comes in, tells me, yeah, I got referred by guy A. So I did the whole bit, just like I did with you. And he goes, no, I totally get it. We go through the whole business, finish out our intake session. We're great. I walk him out to the lobby. Guy A is standing right there. He's my next appointment.
Oh, wow.
Yep. So they high five. Guy B comes back, and as we're walking back and we sit down, he goes, we're starting talking. I go, so I can't confirm or deny that I know either of you. He was like, we're cool. He just kept going, and I was like, okay, there's no hiding it. You guys saw each other in the lobby. That could happen, but
right.
And I've seen that happen. But yeah, Dan, I'm generally comfortable with it, especially given that there's a shortage of healthcare providers. I think generally. It's very common that it's almost similar to like having the same cosmetologist. Like hey, they do my hair right. Maybe they'll do your hair right. I find them tolerable. Maybe it'll be a good fit for you. People tend to hand off our profession in a very personal way because it is such a personal profession. It's pretty normal.
Yeah. And there's sometimes where that can't be avoided. Like, when I was working in small town Iowa.
Right.
There's
one therapist. He's the town shrink.
Yeah.
It's like Andy Griffith down there. And Mayberry. Everybody sees the town shrink. Is this the one guy?
It's like the time that you had to go up to rural Nevada.
Yes. So, Dan, here's a perfect example of this story where it plays out in a difficult way. So I went up to rural Nevada to a town called Hawthorne that had a population of 6,000 humans. And when I get there, I'm just supposed to stay for a couple of days, see a bunch of patients. Those come every week. So there's a bunch of patients lined up to see me. I'm booked for 2 days. So I see these guys. Well, the secretary was having folks sign in on this big legal pad at the front desk. And I told her, hey, I can't have you doing that because the next guy can see who the last guy was. That ain't gonna work. And so she seemed really confused. And I was like, it's about confidentiality. It's this thing with HIPAA. And I'm explaining. She's like, uh-huh. And she's like, okay. She puts the pad down and I'm thinking to myself, am I not good at explaining this? Do people not understand how medical law works? And then I came out and hung out in between sessions for a second. And I saw that 100% of the people know each other. And a lot of times they were smoking in the front. Just in there talking. And then I went to the bar that night and to watch a football game, and half the people I saw that day are at the bar. They just come sit next to me and hey, Doc, good to see you. I'm what do I do? That was the most weird thing ever. But it was totally cool. They were all whatever, man. We're all working on it. Yeah. I was so we could just have after session group here at the bar. Apparently this is where everybody hangs out. They already knew their issues. They just come up and start talking about stuff. I'm we got to talk about football. They're yeah, it's cool. So that's question one.
Yeah.
What do you think about question two? Should we retire the phrase chill pills?
I don't know. I've got, I actually have mixed feelings about this.
You do?
Yeah.
You have some kind of commitment to that phrase that you like?
No, not the phrase necessarily, but just the fact that we have to retire anything or that we
have to adapt.
Yeah. I mean, it's I hear about this stuff all the time with certain phrases that, maybe 300 years ago, this phrase had a terrible meaning to it, and we have to stop using it because of that. I get that, but then the other part of me too is thinking okay, well, that's not what I meant when I said it. Right. And this, that's I think we kind of have to adapt a little bit, some of our phrasing.
Right.
But then the other part of me too is, our whole purpose behind creating this podcast was to destigmatize mental health. And
there's
so
a lot of phrases I would like to see go away.
Right. And
tell you the truth.
So if we're saying stuff like that, then we kind of have to say like, okay, we kind of have to take a stand on some of this stuff.
I see I fully appreciate your conflict, because on one hand, I think we're both pretty anti-censorship. Like, it's better to just talk freely.
Yeah,
we don't police people. At the same time, and our general theme is like, hey guys, but at least we want to inform you, right? And if we inform you about mental health and that causes you to feel uncomfortable using old phrases, cool. You can self-censor, right? And so that's kind of the question I hear with Dan, is like, he's self-censoring. He used a phrase, somebody said, I do take anti-anxiety pills, and he's like, ha!
And I think,
and he
honestly,
felt that pressure, like, maybe I should let that go.
That's the best way to do it.
Yeah.
The self-censorship. When you run into a situation and then it puts you in conflict with what you mean versus what your values are, and you kind of have to choose, and then you make the decision yourself that, oh, you know what, I'm going to stop using this because I just learned something today. Yeah. That's the best way to do it.
Yeah.
Would Jim use this phrase? Yes. Probably should stop.
Probably should stop doing that.
That's a good lesson.
Would Jim say the thing I'm about to say? That's probably a bad thing to say. Yeah, that's a great metric. What would Jim do? Don't do that.
WWJD.
Yeah. I think, you know what, I'm gonna coin that.
Yeah.
I should put that on bracelets or something.
We should sell
maybe
WWJD
sell that as swag.
bracelets.
Oh my God, we should. Because that's so easy to get.
Pod therapy, WWJD.
That's it. No pod therapy. Just sell those. just give them out. It'll be fine. It'll be fine.
Do they hand them out?
Oh, I think we could just give these things out. There's a church.
But I'm saying,
we could probably go get a box of them from a church.
That's what I'm saying. We can get them for free and
turn
we
them
can
around
sell them for $1.
We'll upsell them. It's a genius strategy.
Except we're talking about it on air.
Nah, they'll never catch us. We got lawyers now, man. Pod therapy's lawyered up. We're untouchable. I'm pretty sure that's how it works. But no, I think that idea of like knocking off phrases like that, like as a general rule, Dan, I mean, whatever you decide to do, I like that you're monitoring that now and you're starting to notice this. We all drop phrases like this.
Yeah.
And like this happened the other day, which I don't get offended by, and I won't necessarily condescend to somebody or lecture them. But I was talking to somebody the other day, and they kept using the phrase crazy. Yeah. And like, that's a phrase I've self-censored out of myself. And I used to say, that drives me crazy, and it's just a figure of speech. But I started to realize, even though crazy is not an actual term, I don't feel comfortable saying it that way, right? The thing I want to say is that I'm overwhelmed with something, and I see the silliness of it, and I don't have an answer to it, right? I got to be more articulate and come up with a better way to say it. And so I started throwing around new ideas. But like that idea of like, let's be thoughtful about certain things, right? Because we never know another person's struggle. And if there's a different way to say it, reach for it. That's fine. And I like that kind of changing of things. And, you know, there's things that piss me off, like when professionals in the community or the weatherman describes things as like, oh, the stock market today was bipolar. And I'm like, hey, go to hell. Go to hell, Jim Cramer. You heard it here first.
Well, I mean, like stuff like that. I mean, that's like a legitimate diagnosis.
Yeah, don't.
So
use
that
things
bothers
like
me.
that.
That bothers me more than crazy. Like,
right.
I don't know. I think you kind of have to draw. You kind of have to pick your battles.
Figures of speech, right? Yeah,
I mean, because there's stuff.
fine.
Again, like I like the idea of self-censorship. I don't like the idea of other people telling
Imposing
other
it.
people how they should talk. Or
I
how
tell
they
you how to talk every week.
I know, and it's
I
we
feel
need
like
to talk about
Dan,
that.
if you want to talk with food in your mouth, you go for it, buddy. If you want to chew on the crunchiest, if you want to have ice in a cup and you feel the need to like take swigs of it while your co-host is talking and let the ice just shift around, bud, you do that, Dan. Because you know what? This is America. This is what we fought for.
Exactly.
Great question, Dan. We always appreciate you, man. And stay cool out there in Phoenix, brother. You're the only place on earth that's hotter than us.
Yeah, I'm kidding.
That is just factually untrue.
Is that factually untrue?
Absolutely.
Well, don't count Death Valley. Humans don't live there.
You just said that's the only place on Earth hotter than here.
Than Las Vegas?
Yes.
There's other hotter places?
Yes.
What else? Are you talking about like the core of the Earth?
Well, like half of the Middle East.
Oh, come on. Do you think they're hotter than us?
Well, we should apologize to all our Iraqi listeners.
That's fair. There is a strong... you know what? That was ignorant. I'm sorry. To Pod Therapy Baghdad, the fan club that's meeting right now.
If somebody contacted us right now and said, "Hey, we're big fans out here. We want to fly you out to Baghdad
so you can see how hot
do
it
a
is."
show."
Yeah, just so you can complain about the heat in July.
I don't know if I'd believe that.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd go to that.
You'd go on the plane.
That'd be
This sounds
scary.
legit.
Yeah.
Well, Nick might not go, but I would go. You know why? Because I'm not a bigot.
I'm not saying I'm baited.
Oh, I
just
think
don't
that's
know-
what
I
you're
just don't know
saying.
if it's
That's
safe.
what I heard.
Yep, Las Vegas, not in the top 10.
What?
Not in the top 10 hottest places on planet.
Are you serious? That's
Okay.
We got to be in the top 10 of like major metropolitan cities that are this hot.
Well,
My favorite bit is
are they all Middle East?
Do we have to call ourselves a major metropolitan city?
that's a good point. Yeah. Do we even qualify? We have
No,
one
Death
sports team.
Valley is the hottest.
Ah,
Okay.
Okay.
And then I believe it's all Middle East. There's,
Okay.
We got no. There's Libya is second. Ethiopia,
Wow.
Sudan, Iran, Israel,
Wow.
Mali.
Oh.
That's in the Sahara. There you
Wow.
go. Tanzania,
Jeez.
Oh, yeah.
We're not even close. Wow.
Libya, Iran.
Well, I feel chastened.
Yeah,
So, Dan, I think the message here is go screw yourself. I think that's where we're going.
that's what I was.
You got
getting
it
at.
good, and I'm sick of hearing you complain about it. Call me from Jerusalem. We'll see how hot things get.
All right, well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will discuss converting an open relationship back to monogamy. You're listening to Pod Therapy.
This week's TheraProducer sponsor is Judy Schneider, who would like to give a shout out to her dear friend, Dr. Hariyardi Shashima Abdul Majib, and her amazing team members at Mercy Malaysia. Mercy Malaysia offers early counseling and psychosocial support for persons affected by disasters and gives the victims a safe space to express their feelings and thoughts. Sharima is currently caring for her father who is suffering from Alzheimer's while still organizing and planning for Mercy Malaysia when time allows. She is proud of her astounding work ethic and just wants to say that she loves her, misses her warm hugs, and thinks about her wonderful father every day. If you would like to join Judy and support the show, you can go to patreon.com/therapy and sign up. Again, that's patreon.com/therapy.
We're back. You're listening to Pod Therapy. Our next question is about converting an open relationship back to monogamy.
Hey guys, just old listener Jeff with an update on my sister and a question. So, as you'll remember from episode 69, my sister was held in a mental health clinic for about a week. She had been released back home to her fiancé. She was prescribed and is currently on medication, which makes her very dehydrated, but ultimately makes her feel like her old self again. She is still off from work over a month later with paid leave, thankfully. She says that she does not have full access to her vocabulary yet and finds complex or intensive activities like reading or video games hard to do. She has told me very little of what actually happened, and her doctors would not release her information to me, but she has said she suffers from a severe anxiety condition that went unchecked for too long. She does not remember much of anything else related to the day of the incident, not her early days at the clinic either. She did remember sending me away, though, and made a tearful apology, which of course I accepted with a warm hug. Ultimately, though, she is doing well now, sees her therapist regularly. Thank you both so much for your advice on the show. It really meant a lot to me. Oh, you're welcome,
Awesome.
Jeff. Glad to hear she's doing better,
Yeah.
man. Yeah, give her our regards and, keep on trucking, man. She's going to recover slowly. So glad to hear it's a positive trajectory. On to the rest of Jeff's letter. Now, I also have a question. In episode 59, you discussed my open relationship, which I subsequently broke up from. Today, I am living with my ex-girlfriend and her family, and that has ironically brought my ex and I closer together. Pause right there. That's not very ironic, Jeff. I'm living with my ex-girlfriend, and ironically, who would have guessed it? We're getting closer. Jeff, I'm not surprised. But anyway, on Nerd with your letter, we have had many heart-to-heart discussions about why we broke up, and she has even scheduled an appointment with a counselor. Awesome. We are on track to get back together, but one thing still weighs on me. My girlfriend wanted an open relationship because she enjoys sex with other people. To her, it's thrilling being with new people, whereas sex with me became boring, in her own words. She says that she wants sex with new partners, but doesn't have a high sex drive personally, if that makes sense to you, because it doesn't make sense to me very much. One of the factors in our breakup was how often she would sleep with her side dude while she would not have sex with me for months at a time. That really bothered me for obvious reasons, and now that a possible reconciliation is on the table, I want to address this before we continue. She insists she has a low sex drive, but just enjoys new partners. And for the record, one stipulation of our potential reconciliation I made is that we would be exclusive, since I handled being open so badly. and she agreed to monogamy, though she still does want openness. My question to you guys, I guess, is what should I do? This seems like something that would eventually drive us apart again, and I don't want to reconcile if another breakup is right around the corner. I do love this woman, and she loves me back. We could feasibly see a future together, but I'm not so sure about it with my unhappiness in our sex life and her contentment with the situation. I still love the show and can't wait for every episode. You guys are heroes. Salt pork, Jeff Ackerman.
Okay.
Good question.
Oh, I'm so glad this came into your show and not my show.
You know what? Let's start with Jacob.
That was my lone comment on this email.
I have now held back 100% of my thoughts. Okay. Well, that's an interesting one. So, yeah.
Okay. I've got some questions.
Yes. I'll give you the answers.
No, I think, Jeff, so first of all, your concern is founded in logic. I mean,
Right.
that's a logical concern. I would be concerned with that too. I would be pretty worried if I was in that situation as well. I guess one question I have is I want to know, I would like to explore the dynamics a little bit more about why you're living together.
Sure.
Because that's one thing that, so you broke up, but you're still living with her
Right.
and her family. If you were, let's just say hypothetically, let's start with you're going to get back together.
Sure.
If you are going to get back together, I think you got to find a new place to live. And I would recommend that you take this relationship very slow. You're not living together. You're at separate locations and you have to go back to the beginning into those dating stages again. I'm just too concerned that it's going right back to where it was too quickly.
Okay. So your fear is it's hard to have a fundamentally different kind of relationship when not a lot of fundamentals really changed.
Right. For things to change, things have to change.
Right.
And I just feel like nothing has really changed. And you've heard me say it multiple times in this show before. The best predictor of future behavior is past behavior.
Right.
And when we don't actively make things different, we gravitate towards what we know and what we're used to, and that is usually our past behavior.
Yeah.
Right. Those past experiences. I think a lot of dynamics have to change in order to force change to happen.
Yeah, that's actually really fair. I take no issue with anything you just said. The only thing that I would observe here, Jeff, is I find it to be okay, she's going to go meet with a counselor, right? So let's say I'm that counselor. And so she pops into my office. She says, hi, I was in this relationship with this guy, Jeff. We were really close. We lived together. We live with my family. It's for financial reasons and because it's easy. We're also very close to each other, so there's no reason to move out. We experimented with an open relationship. It wasn't a good fit for him. We broke up because of it, and we stayed close friends. But over time, we've gravitated back to each other. I'm considering entering into a monogamous relationship with Jeff. So obviously, you're already nodding your head.
Yeah, I already know
exactly
where
I'm going
Yep.
with this. So here I am, her therapist, right?
Yep.
And I'm immediately going to talk about the internal conflict I'm hearing.
Yep.
I'm going to say to her, which I don't know that we've ever gotten her name, so I'm going to give her the name Cindy. That feels like a good name. And I'm going to say, Cindy, is this authentic? Like, is this authentically you? Like, I realize you authentically love Jeff, and I think you're authentically re-pursuing this relationship because your feelings are very real and very valid. But I'm worried here because you've already run this experiment once, and you found this to not be congruent with your sexual desires and what you feel is your truth. What has changed inside of you that has brought you to a place where you feel comfortable going back to something that didn't work the first time, right? And that's not me as a therapist saying, nope, don't do it. That's me saying, let's look at this really carefully, right? But if I'm not hearing that anything's really changed, I'm probably going to try to get her eyes to see why this might not work and why it might be painful for her.
Yes. And this was the second point that I was going to make. It was the exact same thing because essentially what I'm hearing is I'm hearing her say, I've got these two things that don't fit together that I'm going to force to fit together.
Right.
So unless something has changed, we know that's not going to work.
Right.
And she's already tried that before.
Yes.
And so what's going to happen? So she doesn't really feel like monogamy is for her.
Right.
but yet she doesn't want to lose him, so she's going to go into this relationship, into this monogamous relationship. So let's say she does that.
Right.
And let's say that she commits to it 100% and she's 100% monogamous. Even if that's the case and she stays monogamous in this relationship, is she going to have resentment?
Yes.
Later towards Jeff, saying like, you know what?
She might.
You knew this wasn't me.
You
but
made me do it.
I kind of felt forced into this situation. I feel like I'm kind of living a lie.
Maybe.
It just feels like
I see your point. It's what happens when we're living incongruent, right?
Right.
Is that it's now, and I want to add a thought to this, Jeff. So far you can tell that we're taking the position, at least up to this point of our answers, of like, hey, there's some red flagginess here, right? We want to brightly flash some orange lights at you and say, hey, pay attention.
And we will at the end of this come back to, if this were to happen, here are the things that we should do.
Yeah, and here's kind of a pivot that I have in mind. I don't want, Jeff, for us to discourage you and say, well, this will never work. I believe that humans are sovereign agents of their own free will, and that if she elects to step into a monogamous relationship, having already experienced both sides of the line, and she, as a grown-up human being, says, no, but I really love Jeff more than I enjoy the recreational sexual fulfillment of the occasional fling, and I already have a pretty low sex drive, so I'm giving up, 6 flings a year to be with Jeff and have that relationship. And she may do that calculus and say, yep, I've made that decision. That's what I want. That's not weird. It's really not. Now, could it be incongruent? Yeah. Is that something she should take a look at? Yeah, sure, absolutely. All humans should do this. But a lot of humans are doing this, right? Almost all relationships that are monogamous at times think, boy, it'd really be fun to have sex with my coworker right now. I'm choosing not to do that, right? Mostly because Nick keeps saying no. And in part because
my answer will not change.
Yeah, no, but that's fine. You don't know. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. But, it comes back to, okay, I'm not going to do that. Why? Because I'm in a monogamous relationship, right? And at the end of the day, we do a calculus. Humans do this all the time. And think, you know what? I still like what I've got. I like the family I've got, and these are the expectations of my relationship, and we come back to that, and I stepped into this knowingly. Nobody tricked me into this. This is what I want. This is what I signed up for. So that part of my answer, Jeff, is to say, you guys are entirely allowed to approach this thing and re-engage in a relationship. And if anything, Nick, and maybe you'll say yes to this too, I like how they're doing it so far. I like that the conversation is up front. I like that they're talking about this. I like that she's communicating to him how the disparity of her sexual appetite has worked in the past. I like that he's setting a boundary and saying, I'm not comfortable moving forward until we have really had this discussion and figured it out. I want you to see a counselor. I want to know that this is what you want. This is great. I like that. I really do.
Yeah, no, I would agree.
If it's going to move forward together, there's a really well set up stage here for them to have the tools that they need to be successful.
Right. I would agree. I definitely get the sense here that there are some boundaries that are being set.
Right.
So that's very important. And obviously Jeffrey's very vigilant, very aware, very, he knows how this could go wrong.
Right. Sure.
So it's not like
eyes wide open.
It's not like he's going into this blindly and just being like, hell yeah, we're back together.
It's going to be great, guys. Yeah, I did not read a letter that said, hey, it's me, Jeff. False alarm. Everything's great.
Yeah, it's all good.
It's all going to be fun. No, he said, hey, guys, I have some severe reservations, and I'm looking for a line of sight on this thing. Since you guys are familiar with the case, what do you think? And I think that we did our honest shot of orange lighting some things, but also saying, hey, but big picture, humans can change, and they're allowed to elect for situations that are not ideal, but that they choose because it fits what they desire long term, right? That's fair. There's a lot of people that do that.
Yeah, and I guess my big concern is the change can't feel coerced.
Right.
It's got to be, each person has to decide for themselves what it is that they want, what it is they're willing to sacrifice, because every relationship is a sacrifice. You sacrifice something in every single relationship.
Yes.
But it's got to be a decision that you are consciously making that this is what you want.
Yes. And so now that we've kind of addressed that uniqueness of the letter, I want to address the tail end of that, which I think macroscopically comes out to all relationships everywhere. And I want your take on
that.
This,
He loves
Nick.
the show and he can't wait for the new episode.
Yeah, we need to address that.
That is a problem.
That's the biggest flag. You need to delete this episode and run. No, but here's the thing I think we don't talk enough about. Sexual compatibility. sexual compatibility in
okay.
relationships, right? So here he says, I want more from my girlfriend. I desire her sexually. It's a bother to me that she only would have sex with me once every month, once every couple of months. And then secondarily, there was this issue that she finds sex with me boring and desires diversity, and that became a secondary problem, right? But it's something that I don't think we pay enough attention to in relationships, where in the phase of should you date, we pay attention to a lot of other compatibility things. Mm-hmm. It's not uncommon for in the first couple of dates to have conversation. What are your political views? What do you do for a living? What are your thoughts? I mean, you might ask questions like, do you want kids? Things like that.
Right.
Because you're basically assessing compatibility. Is there alignment of values? And sex is one of those things that's like the very last thing to come up because it's considered improper or forward. And like by the time it comes up, you already kind of 80% like each other. But then sexual incompatibility can be the death of a relationship. And I can't tell you how often in a therapist's office we see couples that it's sexual incompatibility which is eroding their relationship, and they thought they could just paint over this.
Right.
And it's not that it can't change. It absolutely can. But it's something that I want to do a little PSA about for all listeners everywhere. If you are not having great sex in your relationship, listen, is every time going to be a home run? No. But sexuality and sexual compatibility matters. It matters in the screening process for who you're ultimately going to date, and it matters in the relationship process, and it's not something that should just be pushed off to the side, and like couples never talk about it, and they're like, whatever, we're good co-parents, and I trust you with my money, and we're good friends. Done. And we align religiously. Done. And you're a good person. No, hold on. Sexual compatibility matters for mental health, and it matters for you and your ability to stay in the relationship. I want to break through that stigma and talk about it.
Right.
And I want couples to think about it.
If that's not addressed and they get back together, then what can we expect? We can expect the same thing that happened last time. You're still going to have the same issues and same problems.
Yes.
So, yes, that if you do decide to move forward and try to reconnect and try to get this relationship going again, that has to be addressed.
Yes, it absolutely has to be addressed. And so 2 quick little PSA information side notes when it comes to sexual compatibility and for couples to think about that. If you're in a long-term relationship, there's a great book by Esther Perel we've talked about on the show before, Mating in Captivity. Very good book about basically how to rekindle sexuality in a relationship. That's a long-term one because familiarity, knowing each other for a long time and in so many different ways, dampens sexuality because sexuality is really evolutionarily designed to be novel and exciting, and it's supposed to get mates to like fire off quickly so that way we can make more of the human population.
Yeah, because the limbic part of the brain is like, no, we've already done this one.
Yeah.
We've already made it with that one.
Exactly. It wants to move on.
Right. We need to spread our genes to, more people.
Absolutely. Have we ever talked about the Coolidge effect on this show?
No.
Oh my gosh. We've never talked about the Coolidge effect?
Should that be A Block next show?
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned for the A block of the next show will be the Coolidge effect.
Hot Calvin Coolidge talk coming up next show.
Pod Therapy After Dark.
Because when you think of sex, you think of Calvin Coolidge.
Former President Calvin Coolidge. So I'm going to leave that cliffhanger right there. And when we come back with episode A of the next tape, you will get to hear all about the Calvin Coolidge effect, which is a real thing in science. You can totally look it up. But don't look it up between now and then. Listen to me explain it first, then look it up so you can realize how wrong I am. But Jeff, I like that you're thinking about this. You're thinking about obvious warning signs. Is it possible to reconcile? Yes. Is it possible for a couple to have 80% in common and 20% disparate and be absolutely happy? Yes. As long as they are communicating needs and talking it through and making mutual decisions, I'm great with it. Mm-hmm. And so I like the trajectory you guys are on. And I think it can really rekindle. I think it could be strong as long as you guys are coming into it with eyes wide open, doing some personal work and some couple work on the way.
Yep. Set some good boundaries.
Yep. Thanks for writing in, man.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, we are to the end of the show. It's time for apologies, patrons, reviews, and announcements.
So I'm sure it will shock you, Nick, but I have done nothing wrong, and I have no apologies. Do you have any?
No.
By your laughter, I will assume that you do not.
I I don't. And I'm kind of like shocked and not shocked. I'm
there's
shocked
no
that you
apologies?
don't have any apologies, but I'm not shocked that you think you don't.
I've been very inactive on Twitter. Actually, if I pull up my Twitter right now, I'd probably find 5 things.
Save them for the next
should
one.
say I'm sorry.
I'd like to apologize to Moby,
Oh, you know what? He's right.
who I dated for a short period of time, and I feel like I didn't acknowledge that enough.
Yeah. You know what,
Yeah.
Jacob? That's big
Why
of
is
you.
Natalie Portman getting all the attention?
Yeah. Moby, you don't mention me. You don't mention you've dated 100% of the people in this room. We're going to have to check with our lawyer and find out, is this libel?
Natalie Portman's statement is fucking brutal.
Oh, is it?
I haven't even read it.
It's I don't recall ever dating him. I don't know why he would characterize our knowing each other as having dated. I just remember because he was 33 and she was 18.
Like, yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, there was
And
a
she
huge age
says,
gap.
I'm misquoting here, I'm summarizing. All I remember is this guy who was really creepy around me when I was 18 and had just graduated high school.
Oh, snap.
Burn.
Oh, my.
Wow. That's devastating.
Yeah.
Especially because Natalie, in my experience, is very warm and kind and only says nice things.
From the times that you've hung out. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to say that we
so
dated,
now I think
but we were very close friends.
now him doubling down on it makes a little bit more sense. I think
Why
it's-
he went
it's-
for it?
No, because
Go
it's
for
like,
broke.
Yeah, because it's like, oh, that really hurt, and I have to save face somehow. And
The
I've
jig
only
is
gotta-
up, run through it.
Yep. There's no turning back
Just
now.
follow with the elbow. Just got to follow through.
Oh, wow.
I read that. I was like, that hurts a
hurts.
lot.
That hurts. But you know what? Good for Moby for being relevant. Hanging in there. Maybe this is what we should do.
Yeah.
Maybe that's how we take Pod Therapy Prime Time, is we just claim that we dated some really A-lister. That would work.
Oh, I can't wait for the next
Like
episode.
Moby?
Yeah. A-listers like Moby. You know what? Let's just pick a name out of a hat and just throw it out there. Somebody that will never be able to disprove
I
it.
suggest that you say that you dated Moby.
Yeah, that's the one. We should all
yeah.
just do that. I dated Moby. Hashtag I dated Moby.
Oh, I have a T-shirt idea.
With our WWJD bracelets. It'll also be Pod Therapy. They've dated Moby. Don't get this reference because it's been a month and you don't remember this problem anymore? Cool. Listen to Pod Therapy.
Yeah. This episode's not going to air till Thursday.
It
and
will already have been irrelevant.
The story was already 10 days old, so it's not even going to be relevant by the time we air this episode.
Oh, well, speaking of how time things happen, at the day that you are listening to this episode, if you're part of the general audience, you are listening to it on the very last day of Mental Health Awareness Month. It has been a great month. We have had a lot of great episodes. We did couples therapy. We had recovery on the show with a person in long-term recovery. We talked to therapists who specialize in trans therapy. Therapists who specialize in personality disorders. There was a great debate about the Goldwater rule and Trump's mental health with Andrew Torres, host of Opening Arguments. Really great stuff.
Yep,
He talked about that on Opening Arguments this week.
Yes, I heard it.
Yeah,
That was really cool, man. He shouted out and he was like,
That's
it was a
awesome.
great show. It was a lot of fun. Go check out Pod Therapy. And then he linked to us in the show notes. So it's
Oh,
really cool.
great.
We actually got a new Patreon because of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
which-
yeah.
Yeah,
That's
which
cool.
I will be announcing promptly.
Yeah, and there's an episode. It hasn't aired as of right now, but by the time you're hearing this, it will have aired. Should go up later today and actually tomorrow.
So it'll have aired in the weekend.
Right. Monique Massetti.
Oh,
who
yeah,
I
the
interviewed.
VA one.
Oh my God. That
Oh.
one was an intense interview. There's so many things I had no idea were going on in the VA.
Oh, my gosh.
And specifically working with veterans, and just kind of a trigger warning, it does get a little heavy. We do start
Yeah.
talking about a lot of grief and issues and stuff. So, but
Yeah.
it's
So
great
when you
episode.
heard that episode a week prior to when you hear this episode,
Yeah.
trigger warning.
trigger warning, hey, yeah,
Yeah, you should have known.
yeah.
You know, it's funny because when you called me and told me what you guys had talked about, I immediately told you I have a patient right now who's being disqualified for benefits.
Yeah.
You know, and it's insane what
it's
goes on.
terrible.
I cannot wait to listen to that episode.
Oh, it's terrible.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's horrible. So, but anyway, May is coming to an end. This, as you're hearing this, will be the last day that you can point people toward our Kickstarter. It's probably not going to make it. Kickstarter's all or nothing, and so we are probably not going to finish. But it was a fun experiment anyway, and I think
It
we got
was.
to expose a lot of people to what we do.
We learned some stuff.
We learned a lot, yeah, and
Yeah.
so it was a lot of fun. And anyway, but we will not officially declare its death until the first week of June, which
But
is
it's-
actually in the next episode, isn't it?
But it's dead.
But it's probably
It's dead.
not going to
Say your goodbyes.
say
just,
your goodbyes.
just to be safe.
It's not going to make it. But thanks for all those who stepped up anyway. There was a lot of show patrons who actually showed up and gave some love up there, even though we definitely didn't expect it. And so thank you guys so much for trying to give us the nudge. And to all of our Patreons, I apologize because I didn't realize that you guys are, a lot of you just subscribing to the Patreon feed now, and you don't subscribe to the regular feed. There's a whole bunch of stuff in May that I was posting to the regular feed that I never thought to post to the Patreon feed.
Oh, really?
I never was doing it.
Oh.
So I recently just put up a whole bunch of In Case You Missed It on our Patreon and gave it all away on there because I realized from Ellie, because Ellie was like, guys, where's this episode about trans therapy? And I'm like, how are you not seeing it? And then she's like, I'm on the Patreon.
Oh, I didn't
because I pay for the show.
Right.
I was like, oh, yes, that is where you should be hearing things.
I was posting mine on both.
Yeah, well, luckily, because you're techno advanced, and I'm not.
Right.
It worked out. So anyway, we do want to thank our Patreons who support us at patreon.com/therapy. We have some new THERAPALs in the flock.
We do.
We picked up Beth Rogers, which we forgot to thank last week.
Yep.
And thank you so much for joining us, Beth. We picked up Jennifer Grayson, also a huge friend of the show. She's active on our Facebook and also supported us on the Kickstarter. We also picked up a new THERAPOD, and this is the one who came to us from Opening Arguments, and their name is like, I'm here for the Alex Jones Lawed Awful movies. That's their name
great.
on Patreon. So I'm pretty sure they only created a Patreon for Opening Arguments. And now there are Patreon too. So
thank you.
Thank you for joining us, whoever you are. Who I will not call you Alex Jones because I suspect that that's not what you would prefer. But it is the only name that's in there.
And we want to especially thank our bosses, the Elite Eight and mysterious enshrouded Illuminati members of our fan club, the TheraProducers. Thank you, Smitty Scoop, Jake Schneider, Robert Brownie Jr. Mint, Chairman of the Board, Kayla Lansbury, David Data Scoop, Violon, Judy Schneider, Nathan's Hot Dog Scoop, Dr. Ben Dawn, and ex-officio board member Ellie O'Dare.
If you would like to enjoy all the cool benefits that come with all that Patreon feed, like all the stuff I don't post there, but I'm totally going to. It's up there now, including our book club, which we are filming a new edition of today, actually, and it's going to go up on Monday. You can join us at patreon.com/therapy. And thank you guys so much for supporting mental health. That's all the time that we've got for this week's session. We want to thank our landlords, the Ice Cream Social Podcast, and thanks to those of you today who contributed to our show. We really appreciate it. Remember, pod therapy isn't something you should keep all to yourself. Help us reach others by opening this episode's description in your podcast app and copying and pasting the link provided into your social media. Don't forget, you can find us at facebook.com/podtherapy, on Twitter at PodTherapyGuys, and now at patreon.com/therapy.
If you want to submit a question to the show, ask anonymously at www.podtherapy.net or email us at podtherapyguys@gmail.com. I'm Nick Tangeman.
I'm dating Natalie Portman.
Thanks, and we'll see you for appointment next week.